A quick run through of today's agenda. We have an opening address from Personal Group by video. This is looking at the business of engagement, the research that Personal Group did early last year, which looked at engagement levels across some of the leading companies in the UK and how they address their employee engagement and productivity. We'll then move on to the taxation session, looking at the key changes and what they mean to your organisation, and that will be led by Mo. Following that, we have the financial wellbeing section with Heidi from Neighbour, looking at the latest results from their DNA research. Following that, we'll have the case study from our clients at Sandwell and West Birmingham Hospitals, NHS Trust. Amir will be telling us all about what they've done from their employee engagement perspective, how they got buy-in and the challenges that presented. And then finally, we'll end the session with a Q&A discussion, so you can ask any questions. So as we go, just send any questions through the questions tab on the right-hand side of your screen. Okay, so diving in, we'll start with the video.
At Personal Group, we're very curious about the connection between employee engagement and productivity. Our own experience over the last number of years is that an engaged workforce drives productivity and drives real business improvement. That's our business. We are in the business of helping our customers to improve the employee engagement of their organisation. We saw a productivity improvement for that group of people of the order of 20 or 30%. And that's because they became more engaged in their job. We gave them the tools, we invested in the technology, we made it possible for them to feel more part of what we do and the business that we run. They were more engaged and we got a much better result. We set out to explore the link between employee engagement and productivity. For those that we spoke to, it's clear they are linked. It's clear. If you have strong employee engagement in your organisation, it will drive productivity.
Employee engagement's everything to my business. I have 8,000 people based in 15 sites all up and down the country. We're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So actually the difference in my business is my people.
The magic bullet that makes the difference is the quality and engagement of the people who are driving the business.
So employee engagement isn't just a switch that you can flick on, it's not just something you can do off the side of a desk, it's not a HR task. It's something deeper, it's something more emotional, it's something where people feel connected.
We're working long hours. You need to get on with your colleagues and you need to enjoy what you're doing. And that, for me, is important. I mean, if you get up early to come to the office to do something and get it done quickly so that other people can get on with their work, you've got to be motivated.
A satisfied customer relies on and depends on an engaged workforce.
Employee engagement is a huge part of our business success.
The real differentiator in this game is people.
Like many corporations, we employ a lot of people, many of whom work right at the coalface, dealing directly with customers and with their colleagues and with the products and services that we deliver. The engagement of those people and the passion and care that they have in what they do is what makes things happen.
An engaged workforce, does have a link to satisfied customers, because you get somebody that's an evangelist for your company turning up to meet with customers or delivering something to customers that's exactly what that customer visualised or wanted.
An engaged employee will go the extra mile. They'll do the thing that they otherwise wouldn't have. So they'll spend the extra 20 minutes with the customer understanding the problem. They'll spend the extra 10 minutes asking the questions that they might otherwise not have. They'll get under the skin of something. They'll understand actually the true insight behind a customer's problem or what problems need to be solved. And then they'll take it back into the business and they'll make a difference back in terms of our product development, our product roadmaps, the products and services that we develop and end up taking to our customers.
If our employees are engaged, they bring discretionary effort with them in the most remarkable way.
What we start to see with engaged colleagues is the ones who are really switched on, the ones who are really enjoying their job, start to push the boundaries, start to ask the awkward questions, start to go, but why are we doing that, Martin? Why shouldn't we be doing this?
If we've got great employee engagement, the numbers tend to look after themselves. If the numbers aren't going according to plan, one of the first places you go and look is how engaged are the employees.
Undoubtedly, if you have happy colleagues, you will get a better financial performance. Undoubtedly.
Intuitively, I believe engagement is linked to financial performance, intuitively.
I draw a very strong connection between great talent, highly motivated, doing the right work, and business performance. I think they're inseparable.
Without doubt, where we've got businesses with great employee engagement, everything becomes a lot more straightforward. And the confidence of the business rises, the quality of what it delivers rises, and ultimately the results come through as well.
So I think colleague engagement strategies have a big impact on productivity levels. If I just take the business that I lead, which is a retail bank, my turnover is up, my revenue is up, my profitability has doubled over the past couple of years. The number of people I have in the business has gone down by 30%. Interestingly, at the same time, my colleague engagement has gone up. If you don't have empowered colleagues or colleagues who think they have a role, an opportunity to either put their paw print on the business or come up with ideas to make it better, you're not going to progress as a business. It might be about a tool, it might be about a policy, it might be about a procedure, it might be about a product. But if you haven't got colleagues who at least think about that and care about it, they're not passionate about the business, they're not passionate about the customer, they're not passionate about making it a better place to be. You want people to come up with those ideas. The business leader, in this case me, I don't have all the ideas. My job is to create an environment where people will flourish and come up with ideas and think they have an opportunity, believe they have an opportunity to put that into practice.
You know, if you've got a big crisis or an urgent launch, something that's great but requires many more hours than people are contractually engaged for, you'll get that from people when they're fully engaged. You know, we all go through periods in our lives when we don't feel so engaged, and we know exactly what it's like. You know, come 5 o'clock, you're out the door. That's not the sort of organisation anybody wants. You want the job to be done.
Clearly the difference between someone saying, I've just done my job and that's, now I'm happy, and it doesn't really matter what the end result is, that is inadequate in the current environment where everything's connected and everything's dynamic.
Ultimately, what customers remember is, of course, what we do, but they also remember how we do it. And that how is delivered by people, and we can't get away from that.
If you don't feel empowered to come up with new ideas in your organisation, I feel that's going to stunt innovation.
Nobody goes to work to do a bad job, but a lot of people end up doing that because they're not engaged, and it's much better to be able to sort of admit sort of gaps in your learning, and enable other members of your team, not necessarily a boss, but other members of your team to help you out. And that creates a culture in which everyone helps everyone else to actually deliver the end product.
The way you get people to go above and beyond the core of their job description is to want to do the job. And frankly, if somebody is only ticking the box of the core of their job description, they're probably in the wrong job. They're certainly not fulfilling their human potential. I think they're wasting their lives a little bit and should be doing something else or finding the spark in what they're doing. They're certainly not fulfilling the business potential. And that's a problem because of their cost, but it's a bigger problem because that role doesn't have somebody in it who's on fire and wants to get it done.
Let's do retention, first of all. So I measure two different things when I'm looking at it from an employee engagement angle. One is, are people staying with us? Are they enjoying the job? The other one I look at as well is absence sickness levels. And again, real strong correlations there. So I can look at my best leaders in my best sites with the highest engagement scores. Guess what? Have the lowest attrition, lowest sickness. The leaders I've got where I've got question marks on them, whereas actually the engagement scores aren't as strong. Guess what? High attrition, high absence scores.
The current culture is that no one knows whether their job's forever or not. They don't have the relationship with employers that they used to. There's not a relationship in general of trust between employer and employees. Employees now realise that they're just a resource to most employers. And if that's going to change, that is when productivity is going to increase again.
Your attrition and your turnover of employees goes up, and that's a cost to the business, bringing down your financial performance. So knowing and anticipating how engaged your employees are is a lead indicator for the results that the accountants and the auditors will sign off over the course of the year.
It's about, how do I feel doing the job that I do? Do I have a sense of purpose? Do I feel valued by the organisation? Do I feel as though I have a voice? When I say something, do people listen? Do people take notice? There's nothing more disengaging than feeling nobody's listening and you've got something important to say.
So when it comes to attracting and retaining talent, employee engagement is the crucial difference between a vicious circle and a virtuous circle. So when you have a highly engaged team and colleagues in the business, it's easier to attract people and they stay with you longer. And therefore you need to recruit less because you've got less replacements, and therefore you benefit from that and people stay with you longer, they're more trained, they've been developed, and you get a return on all of the training, induction, all of the areas where the organisation needs to make sure employees are well equipped to perform. And in the reverse, if you've got low engagement, which leads to low morale, your attrition goes up, you have to hire more, your standards can slip, or you can't find the people, or the cost of recruiting them goes up, or you need to pay them more to compensate for other areas of the job which are less compelling to employees. It can go quickly in reverse. So the crucial difference between a virtuous circle which helps you attract, develop and retain colleagues, and the opposite is the extent to which you can engage employees on the overall business strategy, their pride in the business and the clarity with which they can perform.
Good morning, everyone. And over the next few minutes, we're going to cover off some of the key changes that have happened in the sort of world of tax and employee benefits over the last year and a half, and particularly what they mean to your organisation. So what we'll cover off is a few things that I get asked an awful lot about. Firstly, salary sacrifice, and it's that perennial question about, is there life after the consultation and the Finance Acts? And we've all kind of probably got sick and tired of those, but we'll address that particular point. Then looking particularly at car schemes, we'll talk about grandfathering and what that actually means, and some of the issues and questions that I get asked about. Then the new P46 car form for this year. It's all about making life easier and getting tax codes right for your employees. National minimum wage, some of the it's had a lot of publicity over the last couple of years, so we'll talk about some of the pitfalls that we see. And then finally, we'll talk about payrolling benefits in kind and how that can make your life a lot easier. So this is a slide that I used to use before April 2017, before the consultation even came on the horizon. And as you can see, there were a whole lot of points there. And the consultation and the Finance Acts of 2017 have taken away the NIC savings for employers and have taken away for a lot of the schemes tax savings for employees. But out of those 11 points, sort of 9.5 of those 11 points are still there, and the reasons for continuing with salary sacrifice is still very valid. So if we look at some of the points that are there and link it back to the video that we've just seen, So we're looking at, particularly the enhancing the perception of the employer. That all links back to employee engagement. It's about giving financial efficiency through corporate purchasing power. So employees don't have to look for deposits, don't have to go through credit checks. Everything's done for them. A single reduction of salary will allow them to have a benefit that possibly they couldn't have afforded to do otherwise, or couldn't have got through the credit check or whatever that particular issue is. But for me, the big one there is about providing attractive benefits at a price that's affordable. And I think that's a particular big one of mine. And as employers, the last point there about improving cost control still remains the case with salary sacrifice. So when people ask me, is there still life after salary sacrifice, after the consultation and all the tax and NI changes? Well, the answer for me is a very emphatic yes. Still good reasons to do salary sacrifice, still a number of benefits. And I remember some research that was undertaken a couple of years ago where actually the vast majority of employees who entered these sacrifice schemes did so not for the tax and NI savings, but more for the other advantages that we've talked about today. So moving on, let's look at grandfathering for car schemes. So before we talk specifically about grandfathering, just so that everybody's up to speed, company cars through salary sacrifice arrangements, you make a salary sacrifice reduction, and you have to pay a company car benefit in kind charge. So that's always been the case for salary sacrifice car schemes. So what used to happen before April 2017 was if somebody entered into a salary sacrifice car scheme, they would be taxed on a calculation based on the list price of the car and the CO2 emissions of that car. And what the optional remuneration arrangements that came out of the consultation and were introduced by Finance Act 2017 brought into play was this new tax position where it's the higher of the normal car benefit charge as originally calculated, or the amount of the salary sacrificed. And originally, when the legislation came out, it was thought that the amount of the salary sacrifice that would have to be considered for that calculation would have been the total amount of salary sacrificed. But subsequent discussions with Treasury and HM Revenue and Customs have provided the clarity that it's actually only the amount of the salary sacrifice in respect of the car itself that comes into play for the calculation. Any amounts that are paid for insurance, servicing, any other services or benefits are outside the scope of that, and that's all in the legislation. So arrangements that were in place before April 2017 can continue as they are, unless they can run to the normal end of their contract, 6 April 2021, or there is a change, modification or renewal of the contract. And this thing about the change, the modification or renewal, that's the one that automatically throws up lots of questions about what is a variation, what's a renewal of an existing contract. So a few examples there. So the first one, a car's provided under a salary sacrifice scheme since the 30th of April 2016, so before the changes, for 3 years, and the car gets written off in July 18, and a replacement car is provided for the remainder. So in that scenario, that is not a variation, because all you're doing is providing a replacement car, a similar car we assume, for the remainder of the agreement. So that's okay. But if we took that example, but the leasing company didn't offer you a replacement for just the remainder, but offered for another new 3-year period, then HM Revenue and Customs do that variation of the original. Slight nuance there, but something to be aware of. We then have the next example where a company's business has taken over, all the staff transferred under TUPE rules. and the salary sacrifice arrangements with the old business, which were all pre-6 April 17, transferred to the new employer. Again, Revenue have confirmed that that is fine because those changes were outside the control of the employee, and in this case they were also outside the control of the old employer as well. And the final one there, where you've got a pre-April 17 arrangement, and the sacrifice is based on estimated mileage, which then subsequently needs amended. And again, the Revenue has said that as long as the ability to change the contract, to change the mileage terms is written into the contract, then that is part and parcel of the original contract and does not, is not treated, as a variation of that particular contract. So some slight nuances there, but Revenue have given some quite good guidance on their in their employment income manual. So moving on, just staying with cars for a moment, the P46 car form 2018-19 has changed, and the new information required on that form is the cash forgone figure, so the amount of the salary sacrifice. And as I said earlier, it is just the amount in respect of the car only, so nothing to do with services and insurance and all the rest of it. That stays out of it. And the amount that you show on the P46 car is the amount that will actually be foregone in the tax year. It's not the annual amount. So if somebody's got a car for 6 months of the year, then you only show 6 months of the salary sacrifice for the car only. And your leasing company should provide that breakdown on all of their paperwork. So if there's a change to the contract during the year, let's say that the mileage was low and we had to change the contract, and the amount of the salary sacrifice changes, should you submit a revised P46 car? Now, the Revenue's guidance is that you don't necessarily need to. There's no legal requirement to do that. But I would always say it's best practice to do so, because the sooner you get the correct tax code in for your employee, the better it is, because they can pay the right amount of tax as soon as possible. And it saves an underpayment of tax building up, which the employee sees several months later, and usually they're not very happy about it. Now, Tusker have actually agreed a P46 car form submission process with the Revenue, so that what they will be able to offer, and work is underway on this, is they'll be able to submit P46 car details on behalf of their clients, obviously with the necessary authority direct to the Revenue. So that makes life a lot easier for their customers, and it also means that employees start to pay the correct amount of tax on their car benefit sooner rather than later. Okay, moving on, national minimum wage pitfalls. Well, as I said earlier, there's been a lot of publicity on this over the last few years, and you'd sort of think, well, it's quite simple, isn't it, really? You just pay the correct rate. The rate goes up every April, just pay the correct rate. Surely it can't be that difficult. Well, actually it is, because over the last 5 years to the end of December 17, 1,500 employers were fined, a total of £5 million, and employees, 58,000 of them, got £8 million in back pay. So clearly people are doing something wrong. And it's all sorts of employers. There's, retail organisations, pub and restaurant chains. There's small businesses like hairdressers, etc. But it is a whole heap of organisations, including some big household names. And some of those typical reasons are where they fail to pay national minimum wage, national living wage, is if you've got to go from one appointment to the other. Some organisations, particularly in certain industries, they won't pay for the person to travel between two jobs, but you're still actually working, and therefore you have to be paid for that travelling time. The big one that hit the press was Sports Direct, where they used to carry out security checks to staff both entering a building and leaving their building. They're the sort of warehouses. And it typically added about 15 minutes at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day. And the company weren't paying they weren't paying wages for those 2 15-minute periods, and they were found to be in breach of NMW legislation. So they fell foul there. And the big one that you see an awful lot of is deducting money from net pay for uniforms. So it's a condition of your employment that you have to pay from net pay. And so the employer pays normal national minimum wage at the gross level, but then makes that deduction from net pay for a uniform. And the legislation is very clear that where an employer forces an employee to make a deduction or to agree to a deduction from net pay, and it is for the benefit of the employer, in this case the employer keeps the money for the uniforms that they provide, then that is a breach of NMW. So even though it's from net pay and you have paid the correct NMW rate at the gross pay level, you would be in breach of NMW legislation. So how does this impact upon salary sacrifice schemes and NMW? Because typically we all know that for salary sacrifice schemes, you know, you cannot reduce gross pay below NMW. Everybody knows that, and you know, I don't come across any companies that do that. But what happens when somebody's ordinarily being paid and earning at or above NMW, and then their circumstances change, and then they cannot then, or the company cannot make that reduction because they would otherwise fall foul of NMW. One or two of the things that I've often seen is, let's take the amount of the reduction that we can up to the point where NMW is not breached, and then we'll take the remainder from net pay as a deduction. Well, going back to the previous example I talked about for net pay from uniforms, that is not allowed. That net pay deduction is not allowed. You would again fall foul of NMW. So that is something that I've seen a number of employers do in very specific circumstances rather than as a rule. But again, if they were to be audited for NMW purposes, then they would fall foul of that. So that combination of gross and net pay does not work. Again, there are net pay deductions made for benefits provided by the employer, and a typical one might be an affinity scheme where the employer provides a benefit through possibly a third party. Employee voluntarily makes a choice to have that deduction, but because it's a deduction from net pay, which the employer collects and then pays over to the third party, again, that would fall foul of NMW legislation. And typically where the employee chooses to opt for a benefit that's possibly from a third party, the best way to deal with that would be for the employer to stay out of it and the employee to make a direct payment from their bank account to the third party. And the same would apply if it were a goods or services they wanted to purchase from the employer, but again, of their free will, again, pay for it out of their bank, so it's not a deduction from pay. And that keeps it outside the NMW net. So that's NMW. Talking about payrolling benefits in kind. Now, payrolling benefits in kind has been around for a few years, but it has gained in both publicity and popularity as the revenue moves more towards making tax digital. It's still a voluntary alternative to completing forms P11D. Now, it doesn't affect the total amount of tax and national insurance that either the employer or the employee pays, but what it does mean is that for employees, they pay the correct amount of tax every month, i.e. in real time. So there's no waiting for the tax code to be changed. You don't have to tell the revenue about the fact that this particular benefit is being provided. You put it through payroll, account for the tax through payroll, and everybody can, hopefully the right amount of tax goes through in the year. Now, at the end of the year, Currently, if you're providing benefits in kind to your employees, you have to complete a P11D. Well, under this option, you don't have to provide complete P11Ds. Everything is done through payroll. And for company cars, again, we talked about P46 car forms. Well, with payrolling benefits in kind, you don't actually need to complete a P46 car form. It's all entered in payroll and it goes through as part of your full payment submission for the month. Now, the only downside to payrolling benefits in kind is that you need to register for the service before the start of the tax year. So now, sitting here in June, we can't actually do anything until the 2019-20 tax year. So if you wanted to operate payrolling benefits in kind, you need to apply for the service to the revenue. There is an online application, and the next available tax year is 2019-20, so the year commencing 6th of April 2019. One point to note that whilst all of this is great from a tax perspective, it doesn't affect the employer's Class 1A reporting process. That still has to be done after the end of the year, just as it is normally. But there's, you know, a lot of admin is taken away. I've had a number of my clients go through this in the last tax year, and the key reasons they go through it is, one, that the employee pays the right amount of tax at the right time, and secondly, it is about reducing the amount of administration. So it removes that need for P11Ds, and it frees up a lot of internal time. So that brings me to the end of my session. So thank you very much, and I'll hand back to Wendy.
Hi everyone. So we're now going to move on to the financial wellbeing section of the day. So over to you, Heidi. Are you okay to click through to the next slide for us, Andy? There we go.
Lovely, thank you. So good morning, everybody. So my name's Heidi Allen and I am Head of Employee Benefits at Neighbour. So for those of you who might not have heard of us, because we are a relatively new organisation, we're an award-winning financial wellbeing provider that really aims to help UK employees be better with their money. It's as simple as that. So we partner with employers to support their workforce's wellbeing, and we do that by providing access to a range of products and services, including affordable salary deducted loans, financial education, both on-site and online, and workforce insights. So our vision at the company is to build a community of employees who can confidently deal with their money and have access to fairer finance at a time and place that suits them. So over the last few years, if we could move on, thank you. Over the last few years, we've carried out a number of research studies to really help us understand UK employees and to help us understand how employees really feel about their own financial situation. So this research culminated in me writing the DNA of financial wellbeing both in 2016 and 2017. But in 2018, I'm actually doing things slightly differently. So 2018, I'm actually going to create a series of books which will enable me to dive deeper into some of the topics that I've covered. So book one is actually the internal factors. So this is our attitudes, our mindset, and how we personally feel about our financial situation. Book two will be our day-to-day money management, how we cope with everyday things such as budgeting, money management, and regular forms of borrowing. Book three will look at confidence and capability. So this is things like building up your savings buffer and having those protection policies in place to help us cope with the unexpected situations that life can sometimes throw at us. And then book four will look at external factors. So how do these worries and concerns manifest themselves on our behaviours? And then how does this in turn impact our relationships, our children, and also the workplace? Now, the release of these books is going to be staggered over the next few months, and the first book is actually due to be released at the end of June. So really excited to be able to share that with you when it's available. So what I want to do today is just give you some of the high level insights ahead of the game, prior to that book being released in the next couple of weeks. So the first thing I want to talk you through is we asked employees what things it was that they were actually concerned about. And it may or may not surprise you, depending on how involved with these types of things you are. But financial worries has come out on top for the 3rd year running, followed by physical health and later life, as you can see here. But that's the employee perception. Interestingly, when we asked employers the same question, we got a very different set of results. So we can see a disconnect with them thinking that work-life balance, work-life and career development are the main things keeping their employees awake at night. So that's in stark contrast to the reality of what's actually happening with employees. So moving on, the simple answer is people are worried about their financial situation. So what I've done for you here is I've broken it down into ages. And as you can see, pretty much across the board until we get to sort of the mid to late 50s, financial worries is the top concern. But it's quite interesting when you start to look at the older employees where later life and physical health start to overtake those concerns, which is quite natural as you would expect. Work-life balance starts to come into the mix as employees start to settle down and they begin their families and they grow their families. And then as they start to get older, as you would imagine, later life finances start to become more of an issue. And that issue gets bigger as individuals get older, where it's finally overtaken by physical health when they're in that later life stage. So these financial worries can manifest themselves in a number of different ways, and it could be stress, anxiety, loss of sleep, depression, all sorts of things. Now in 2016, 7 in 10 employees said they'd been affected by financial worries in the previous year. In 2017, we saw this decrease just slightly to almost 6 in 10, 58%. But this year it's risen slightly again to more than 6 in 3, so 63%. And again, when we look at the age breakdowns, we see these numbers increase significantly, again, for those younger generations. And again, we've seen this consistently higher for those younger employees over the last 3 years. So here you can see the impacts that people are suffering and how these have changed. So generally, the good news is we're seeing things improve across that 3-year period. But there's still a significant number of people suffering both physical and mental health issues directly as a result of financial worries. Now, employers, as we know, want to get the best out of their employees. We need to make sure that they're engaged, they're healthy, they're happy, and they're productive. But when we think about well-being, we need to think about the whole person. Because yes, our brains are magnificent things and they can cope with a certain amount, but they have a capacity. And if something's worrying us, say financially, it can impact us physically by affecting our sleep, for example. Longer term, it could affect our mental health as stress and depression become more likely. And that goes full circle, affecting our ability to perform at work, which therefore could impact us financially again. So none of these areas work in isolation. If things aren't going well, we can get ourselves into a vicious circle, a vicious downward spiral. Likewise, when we turn these things around and things start to improve, this turns into a virtuous circle of positivity. So the key is helping people recognise the behaviours and the actions that are forming negative outcomes and help them turn those into positive ones, not only for today, but also for their future selves as well. So one of the main concerns employees have is the amount of debt they have. And again, unfortunately, we have seen an increase year on year of the average household debt. And the new report launched in a couple of weeks sees that topple over 13,000 on average per individual per household. That's a significant increase. So managing day-to-day finances can be tricky for some. So understanding what money's coming in and what needs to be paid out. So if you have a fixed income and fixed outgoings, once you've done that initial piece of work, it's quite straightforward to keep on top of it. But when somebody has an income that fluctuates on a monthly basis and potentially either fixed or fluctuating outgoings, it actually turns into a really difficult thing for individuals to do. And we see more than half of those that we surveyed, 57%, having an income that fluctuates by more than 10% per month. And again, spotlighting on those younger generations, those figures are even higher. And this has increased from 48%, excuse me, from 48% that we saw in last year's survey. But this issue goes right across all of those generations. So what happens when something unexpected happens, something out of the ordinary occurs? So that could be a puncture on a vehicle, or it could be a white goods breaking down at home. Half of those that we asked are regularly borrowing month on month to meet basic financial needs. So again, this has increased from what we saw last year, as you can see. So by basic financial needs, I'm not talking about luxury items, fancy holidays or anything like that. I'm talking about the basics, paying the bills, the utility, the mortgage or the rent, your basic travel to get to and from work and school, and putting food on the table. And this is a spiral that can easily progress into a more severe situation, especially when we look at the methods they're using, including credit cards, overdrafts, unfortunately payday lenders and loan sharks as well. So here we can see the common products that people are using to carry out that regular borrowing. And it's not going to surprise you, I'm sure, that credit cards are the most common vehicle 3 years running. But again, we see a slight decrease year on year. But within 2018, we actually see a slight increase in payday lender and loan shark use from last year. So this is what I mean when I talk about that vicious circle that we spoke about a moment ago. Borrowing money to pay basics. Then what happens next month? We need to borrow a little bit more to pay that lender back. This then escalates, and it is such a difficult situation for people to get out of. So with employees spending more than £300 per month on average on unsecured debt alone, that's a significant amount of money out of their income, especially if they've got a fluctuating income. So that's why we find a large number of employees are feeling out of control when it comes to their personal finance. But what's equally concerning are those that are just about managing to pay those minimums amounts each month. Then, as I mentioned before, something unexpected happens. So the puncture on the tyre on the car or the white good breakdown. Where do they go and how do they handle that situation? That's why having some money put aside as a buffer can really help build that feeling of being in control. Having even just a tiny bit set aside to pay for unexpected expenses helps build financial confidence. We see more than a third of employees that we surveyed having less than 1 month savings put aside to be able to deal with such things. And again, when we look at the ages, we see younger employees without savings being even higher. But what's also interesting is when you look at the far right and you look at the older generations who should be getting ready to start the next phase of their lives, but without having rainy day savings, coupled with that regular borrowing, what choices are they actually going to have when it comes to phasing down their work into retirement and later life if they can't manage when they're working full time? Now, interestingly, our survey also found a high percentage of respondents that don't regularly check their credit score. Now, you might think that's not a surprise, but it's a common misconception that you only need to check your credit score when you need a financial product, and that's the only time that you should think about it. But think about the increase in fraud and identity theft. And I would urge every person on the call and everyone in your organisations, they should be thinking about their credit score as part of their regular financial checks. If you know what your score is, it's really easy to keep an eye on it. But it's very easy as well to spot when something isn't right. An extra mobile phone contract or a credit card opened that you haven't done. And once you've got this up and running, it's very simple. ClearScore, for example, who I use, send me an email every month and say, great news, your score stayed the same. Fantastic. I don't need to do any more than that. But if they send me an email saying, your score's changed, if I know I've done something, I've changed mobile phone provider or I've changed a utility provider, I'm expecting my score to change. So I'll go in, just double check it quickly, takes a few seconds, job done. But if that email comes through saying your score's changed and I haven't done anything that will impact my score, then that's a trigger for me to go in and make sure that something untoward hasn't happened. The sooner you spot something, the easier it is to rectify, and the more time you've got to sort that issue out, rather than waiting until you need a financial product. So your mortgage rate, for example, might be up. If you leave it to the last minute to sort these issues out, it can actually have a knock-on impact to bigger picture things for you. 6 in 10 employees feel that their behaviour changes when they're under financial pressure. So this includes behaviour, their ability to perform at work, their ability to manage their money, their ability to make decisions. But as you can see, employers have also noticed this change in their employees as well. So with attracting and retaining staff and performance management and staff development being so high on the employer's agenda, all of these things that we've talked about today have a direct impact on employers as well as employees. But from our perspective, it's really encouraging that the conversation as to how employers can help employees is becoming more commonplace and is starting to rise itself up the agenda. So it's massively encouraging each and every one of you on the call today that cares about the engagement and the well-being of your employees. Anything that you can do to help build confidence, knowledge and capability when it comes to employees and their personal finances is absolutely fantastic. And it's interesting when we think about the challenges facing employees and employers. So I asked the question to employers, what are the main challenges facing your organisation over the next 12 months? And as you can see, just like employees, it largely focuses on financials, the economy, employee performance, recruitment, all of the things that are on the agendas for your employees as well as your organisation. Any wellbeing strategy has to think about the whole person, as we've already mentioned, the physical, the financial and the mental. And from a financial perspective, yeah, it's great to be able to offer products and services, including loans and savings. But we have to help employees address why they're in the situation they're currently in. So what have they done to be successful? And what's not been so positive? And that's where education comes in. Helping employees build their knowledge really is key to helping them on the journey to building their confidence, their resilience, and ultimately their capability. And if they take out a product or a service, they need to do so with all of the information to help them make an informed decision. Because what's right for one person isn't right for somebody else. And everything we do is habitual. So be that negative spending or money management habits. If we don't address those habits, they're just going to return to that same behaviour. So helping them to recognise small things that they can do that has a positive impact can actually help turn the lives around of those employees. So thank you for your time. I'll leave it there and I'd just like to hand back over to Wendy.
That's great. Thanks, Heidi. So I think up next we have Amir from Sandwell and West Birmingham NHS Trust. So over to you.
Hi there, I'm Amir. I'm the Head of Employee Benefits and Engagement at Sandwell and West Birmingham Hospitals NHS Trust, which is a bit of a mouthful, so I'm going to use our acronym of SWBH. I'll be talking to you today about our employee engagement strategy and how we've attracted and retained key skills in a competitive market. So over the next 15 to 20 minutes, we'll look at why staff engagement is important, and then we look at a four-tier approach to our engagement strategy, which is attract, retain, develop, and impact. So as other colleagues on this webinar have mentioned previously, there's a number of reasons why organisations should focus on employee engagement. There's a few stats up there on the screen. We've seen a few stats previously, but just to sum up, it's to improve staff sickness, is to improve productivity within the workplace, and it's more, so 67% of engaged workforces advocate their organisations. They only have 3% of employees that are disengaged, which means that if your employees are more engaged, they're more productive and they bring their whole self to work. So at SWBH, we underpin our engagement by the four enablers I've mentioned before. So this slide is just a summary of that. So to attract and retain, we want to create an environment which is excitement, and we want there to be understanding between our workforce, our colleagues, and our management. We want to retain the employees that we bring into our organisation. So we've done a lot of work on attracting employees to our organisation. We've reduced nursing turnover by 3%. We've offered 150 jobs at one of our recruitment events recently. But more importantly, and what the focus of today's presentation is going to be, is to retain, look at the retention of our workforce and what we've done by means of employee benefits and engagement to achieve that. So from an attraction perspective, we've had a new recruitment brand based on our unique selling points. So what you can see there is at the top of the screen is our ambition branding. So we worked in partnership with TMP Worldwide, and they came up with a brand which is an infographic of some of our key values, some of our services that we offer, and some of the images on the infographic represent the local and diverse communities that we work with and our workforce as well. We've had a lot of social media activity. We've had RCN recruitment events, both internally and externally, and we've had a lot of activity on our jobs website, which you can see there on the screen. So that's a larger image of our branding. So the branding is "We'll bring your ambition to life." So it's a journey. So that's what we would use to attract them. But then that shows a journey of whilst they're here with us and what they can achieve whilst they are with us. There you can see some images from recruitment events that we've had up and down the country and internally as well. So those are some of our happy nurses and senior nursing colleagues who you can see, and then some of the nurses that we've recruited at our events. And then that's an image from when we attended the Pride in 2017 in Birmingham. So we had our recruitment stand there. So we were supporting our LGBT colleagues as allies and LGBT representatives from the Trust. But we also had a jobs store, so recruitment event there. So we interviewed and recruited people at that event as well. As I said earlier, today we want to focus on the retention element of employee engagement. As part of this bit, I'll be talking about SWBH Benefits, which is our employee benefits portal. And we'll talk about some of our health and wellbeing initiatives that we've got within the trust, our nursing, educate and celebrate events, some of the inclusion and diversity work that we've done with our staff networks. And we want to focus, and we've had a focus on about substantive staff and nursing leadership as well. So where we were was that we had a burning platform. So in 2016, the Trust had a scattergun approach to employee benefits. We had employee benefits within the Trust, but there was no centralised place where these employee benefits were. The comms were inconsistent, so it was only pockets of staff who were aware of the employee benefits available to us. And then what we did was an analysis of what we've already got, and then what we can do and what we can implement to give us that USP which we lacked. We are operating in a tough market for Band 5 staff nurses, and that's a national shortage. So all NHS trusts up and down the country are having the same issue. So we needed to have a clear USP so that we could attract the best and retain them when we have them. So the key statistics when we started on this journey was that we had 180 Band 5 nurse vacancies. Our turnover rate for the nursing colleagues at Band 5 was 14.7%. The understanding of our employee benefits offer was very poor. The salary sacrifice schemes we had in place, they were not well used, and that was due to the communication element, and our sickness rate for the organisation was just over 5%, costing the organisation £9.6 million per year in lost days. So the strategic context of why we invested time, energy and money into our employee benefits offering was that Trust Board committed to reduce turnover by 3%, and we wanted to use our employee reward offering to re-engage our employees, boost morale and maintain and increase employee productivity, which was in line with some research done by the CIPD in 2016. Employee benefits are a strategic tool to assist recruitment and retention, and we found that from various pieces of research that we've done, and we wanted to incorporate that into our employee engagement, but our recruitment and retention strategy, especially for the staff nurse colleagues that we wanted to focus on. We wanted to be a place that employees wanted to work, live and play. We wanted to be an employer of choice. And we appreciated that there was a strategic need to retain key skills and knowledge, encourage innovation, creativity and pride, and that's why we wanted to refocus on our substantive workforce. So what we did was we decided to bring all our employee benefits together in one place, under one platform and under an umbrella brand of SWBH Benefits. The Trust appointed myself as the Head of Employee Benefits and Engagement to lead on that project. We put salary sacrifice schemes on a proper financial footing with clear return on investment, and that was regularly and continues to be regularly monitored by our Finance Director and our Director of HR and Organisation Development. We partnered with the Personal Group and also Let's Connect to identify our gaps and to have a new platform where all our employee benefits are in one place. The whole exercise, the analysis exercise, allowed us to expand our employee benefits offer, which was relaunched alongside our wellbeing initiatives within the Trust. We launched our discounts, which were national and local, as part of this initiative, working very closely with the Personal Group. and we gained a lot of return on investment data for board so that we could get this approved at board level. So we enhanced our employee benefits offering by integrating our approach, and as I've mentioned before, to bring it all under one umbrella brand of SWBH benefits. Through our employee discounts scheme, employees can save up to £800 a year. Through the childcare voucher scheme, which we run through Evenred, employees can save up to £1,000 a year. Another salary sacrifice scheme is the Cycle to Work scheme, which is tax efficient bikes, and that's how employees can save money where money comes out of their gross salary. Again, we partner with Tosca for our car lease scheme. So you can have a brand new car and all you pay for is for petrol. And then we partnered with Let's Connect for our technical schemes, which included our smartphone scheme and the smart technology scheme. More recently, we have worked very closely with Neighbour to introduce our financial wellbeing and our financial wellbeing portal, which is very, very successful in its early inception, and the actual process of implementing that within our trust has been very easy. Neighbour have been really, really helpful in terms of our specific comms collateral, which we wanted for our NHS employees. We're a public purse, so it was quite important to us what we wanted to communicate to our staff, so that's been absolutely brilliant. We have a number of health and wellbeing services, which you'll see on the next slide. So what you can see there is that's not it's a comprehensive list, but it's not an exhaustive list. So we've got the various health and wellbeing offers available to our staff, and this is one of the slides which is shared with our staff when we have inductions for new staff within our organisation. So what is the scheme all about? So the employee benefits platform and the discount scheme can save staff money, so it's up to £1,000 a year, depending on what scheme and what discounts they're using. There's online and in-store discounts, there's text codes, cashback, and there's instant vouchers, so you can get instant discounts. Over 700 retailers on the scheme with over 6,000 discounts. As I've said before, we work with the personal group to make this a reality. We have national and local discounts for our staff, and it's no cost to the taxpayer or the employee. So how we implemented the scheme was what the scheme costs us as an employer is then offset by us taking the scheme with Let's Connect. So the savings that we're making from that scheme offset our costs for what we're implementing for the portal. And case studies show that there's an increase in employee engagement, commitment and loyalty, something that we'll speak about later on in the presentation. So that's just a screenshot of what our employee benefits portal looks like. There's different tiles which host our various employee benefits. So we've got our core benefits, health and wellbeing, our trust charity, local discounts, and then you've got the everyday discounts, as well as our salary sacrifice, salary exchange, salary sacrifice schemes, and then there's the ability to have push notifications as part of the communications tile. In addition to all the work that we've done with the personal group, we have a local discount scheme which is run in-house, and that delivers some of our pledges as part of our public health plan. So we work with local organisations because we want to how we work is we promote local organisations free of charge through our various communication methods, and then they reciprocate by offering staff discount, which is unique to our colleagues, and that's how we make that work, and that's a huge success. All staff need to do is show their NHS ID badge and they can redeem the discount, so it's very easy to redeem. That's just a screenshot of our launch event. That was a flyer which went out with our payslips. in September 2016, and we launched in October 2016. We have 2 main employee engagement, employee health and wellbeing events a year. One tends to be in October, where we launch our flu jab campaign, and then the other one is in April time, just in springtime, ready for summer. We have all of our partners attend these events so that they can come and speak to our staff, and there's always a lot of engagement-y kind of activities going on throughout the day, which keeps the employees interested. So at this event, we achieved 81% of our flu jab campaign, which was patient-facing staff. That's the highest we've had in history, and we won a HPMA award for that as well, something which I'll speak about slightly later. We had 2,000 colleagues sign up to our employee benefits portal on the day. We had over 700 employees attend the event during the course of the day, which was the most successful employee benefits and engagement event that we've had within the trust. And that momentum has continued over the last couple of years. We worked quite closely with, at the outset, with our staff side, which is our trade union colleagues and our staff networks. We had a number of activities going on, including yoga, Pilates, holistic therapy and massages, and that all contributed in reducing our sickness by 20% in 2016. So there's some images there from our events, and in the top corner you can see a good-looking gentleman, and that's me. And then we've got our Cycle to Work schemes. We've got on the bottom right-hand side, you can see our personal group, Let's Connect guys, showcasing the technology schemes there. So as part of our communication, that was quite key to us, because the vast majority of our staff are patient-facing. And we wanted to engage all of our workforce and have a focus on the physical hard copy comms rather than digital. As I've said, 70% of our staff are patient-facing, which means they have limited access to computers. So in order to achieve this, what we did was we had face-to-face visits on wards, clinics and departments. We had a number of events at our community sites where we have fewer staff, but actually they don't get access to our comms as much as staff in our hospitals. We produced flyers. We had staff communications go out with salary slips. We used our internal comms. And then what we also used was the mobile app as part of SWBH benefits, which is provided by the personal group. And we sent out push notifications, which was a very handy feature as part of that platform. So some of the feedback that we've had is, so in the 2016 NHS National Staff Survey, there was clear improvements in our employee engagement. So for the question, does your organisation take positive action on employee reward? Those who answered yes increased from 92% in 2015 to 93% in 2016, and the industry average is 92%. And the other question was, during the last 12 months, have you felt unwell because of work-related stress? Those who answered yes reduced from 38% in 2015 to 34% in 2016. And again, the industry average is 34%. And 86% of our staff feel that the new employee benefits package is a positive improvement to their working life. And there's, we've had support right from the top. So our chief executive has said that the delivery of SWBH benefits has been superbly executed and has truly created a level of enthusiasm and participation that is taking our organisation to new heights. And every member of staff and colleagues on our board would echo that sentiment as well. We won the HPMA award last year for the Health Shield Friendly Society Award for Wellbeing, which was all of our work on employee benefits and engagement. We won our award at the ENEI Awards in 2017 for the Inclusive Culture Award, and we've been shortlisted for a number of awards last year and this year as well. So the next stage of our employee benefits journey was to develop. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to take a holistic approach to our employee engagement. So when we had staff who are working for us, once we've retained them, what would we do to improve their potential for the future? So as part of this, we committed to a 3-year educational and learning development plan. We have a annual protected budget of £1.1 million. We focus on our preceptorships, especially for our staff nurse and doctors programs. We have support right from the top, as I've said, from our nursing colleagues who work very, very closely with our corporate and HR colleagues. And we launched our new PDR, which Aspiring to Excellence, which came into effect in May 2017. And that's one of the screenshots of what it looks like. And that's, it's a conversation as opposed to completing lots and lots of paperwork as part of your PDR. So we have over 400 managers that are trained on that, and over 2,000 staff who have attended the training for that, and that's successfully implemented. And it's almost a year and a half into the program that we are at the moment. And then finally, the impact element is that we made 150 offers, which was a 60% conversion rate, 3% reduction in our nursing turnover in the past 12 months. And there's been a slight improvement of another 2% since this slide was produced. We've got almost 3,000 staff who have signed up to SWBH benefits. Our job site is getting more and more activity with over 1,000 hits per week, and we've been shortlisted for numerous awards as you've seen in the previous slides. So my details are on there. Please take note and feel free to get in contact if you want to hear more from myself. Thank you for your time.
Cool, that's great. Thanks, Amir. Some really interesting bits of the story there. So I think now we're ready to go to the question and answer session. So people have been submitting their questions as we've gone through the session. So we'll just jump through to those now. Bear with me 1 second. So if you have any questions, just remember to click on the orange arrow on the right hand side of your screen and pop them into the questions box, and we'll get through as many as we can today. So the first one that we have, I think, is straight for you, Amir, is how did you get buy-in from the board and get senior management buy-in to all of the initiatives that you've run?
I think that's quite imperative, and that's one of the questions that we get asked quite a lot. And board are quite interested in how this project would make an improvement to us as an organisation, and actually just sharing some of the research of what employee engagement can do for an organisation is heaps. So we wrote a short paper which was not long-winded. It was just have the key facts on there, which shows what are the benefits of implementing an employee benefits and employee engagement strategy within the workforce. Then in addition to that, just having some financial forecasts of what savings we can make in terms of how we reduce costs in terms of recruitment, retention, and then also in terms of sickness as well. So all that coupled together into a short paper is what helped us get buy-in from our board.
Brilliant, thank you. The next question is for Heidi, and that one is, the stats that you shared are all very focused on all UA in the UK as a whole. Did the results vary by sector?
That's a really interesting question, so thank you whoever submitted that. The simple answer is obviously the data that I shared with you today is just a few snapshots of the report that's due to come out at the end of June. So if anybody would like a copy, please reach out. Likewise, the simple answer is yes, things do vary between regions as well as between industries. So there are a certain number of industries that have some more significant challenges than others, it's fair to say. So for example, retail, telecommunications, hospitality all have a higher level of fluctuating incomes just purely based on the type of workforce that they have and the types of work that those individuals do. Obviously some of that work is very seasonal as well. So yeah, it's really interesting when you start to dive into that in a little bit more detail. I can segment all of that data in a number of different ways. So if anybody would like to have a conversation about any particular industries or any particular regions, then you're more than welcome to get in contact and we'll happily pick that up with you separately.
Brilliant, thank you. The next one, I guess, is for everybody on the call, which is, how long does it typically take to get different benefits up and running? And I guess if we could all answer that in turn, because we have both Tusker, Let's Connect, Neighbour and Personal Group on the line. So if I go to Alison first, so to set up a car salary sacrifice scheme, how long does that typically take to get up and running and implemented across an organisation?
Hi there, yeah. A typical steady paced implementation is typically 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. Depending sort of on the organisation and commitments. We've found generally that it's good to run it as a sort of a limited project rather than spanning across a number of months if possible, because it becomes much more efficient in getting the scheme launched and clearly the benefits that sit with that underway. But we work very much with organisations. I have to say we've done them quicker than 4 weeks, but I think from a managed perspective, 4 to 6 weeks is sensible.
Brilliant, thank you. And Let's Connect. Jonathan, are you able to share how long it typically takes to get the technology salary sacrifice up and running?
Yes, of course. Good morning, everybody. So really short, quick answer. So Let's Connect would ask for a 4-week run-up to the launch of the benefit, and that assumes that we've been able to capture the scheme design requirements. That's just a basic bit of information about how you'd like us to set up your salary sacrifice scheme, and it considers things like employee eligibility. It covers how much you're happy letting people sacrifice up to, so a salary sacrifice maximum, and a few other details around payroll. So 4 weeks from receipt of that information, and Let's Connect will be able to launch a scheme for you.
Brilliant, thank you. And from a Personal Group perspective, I can probably answer that one. It very much can depend on the size and shape of the benefits platform that you opt for. There are some out-of-the-box offerings where it's a standard setup, a standard set of tiles and buttons on the app and on the platform, but again we'll build it around either your current benefits provision or a pick and mix of a customized version of what your new benefits will look like. So again, I believe the fastest turnaround time we've had has been in a similar size. It's a matter of weeks. Others, it becomes quite an ongoing process where they may launch one set of the benefits at once and then just expand that provision adding new tiles as people are increasing their usage of the system. So again, to Heidi at Neighbour, if somebody wanted to roll out in a financial wellbeing programme, whether that be from an education perspective or from the financial support of the loans and the savings, how long does that take to get up and running?
So again, the simple answer is pretty much the same as everyone else, really. It's just a matter of weeks. For us, the biggest part, and obviously Yamir from Sandwell is testament to that, the biggest part for us is about the communication. So it's about working with the organisation to make sure that the communications are aligned to what they need, so that it ties in with the rest of their benefits branding. And that's the part that takes the most amount of time, to be honest, because that's all about making sure all of the different elements of the jigsaw are all consistent. We've got the consistency within the launch communication campaign. But again, in terms of actually setting up, we're talking very simply just a matter of weeks.
Brilliant, thank you. Now we're running quite close to the end time, so I do have one more question, and this one is for Mo, and a quite a specific one. So when an employee leaves their employment, what takes precedence? Would it be the agreement that they have and they must repay the balance in full from their final pay, or can we only collect the balance down to their minimum wage and then invoice them for the rest? So when it's their final paycheck, what are the rules around that national minimum wage?
Okay, so first and foremost, you'd need to go back to the terms of the particular scheme. So depending on whether it's a technology scheme or whether it's a car scheme or whatever it is, there will be some very specific rules within that document which talks about what happens when an employee leaves. So often it will be written in that if you leave, you have to make a payment direct to the provider from your own funds. So it could be nothing to do with pay then, and it becomes a payment that you make to the third party provider. In other situations, I've seen in as long as you meet the eligibility criteria, there is insurance cover built into the scheme as well. So that's why I say you have to look at the particular terms and conditions of whatever scheme you've entered into, because that will determine what your payment obligation is. And the payment obligation usually isn't to the employer. The employer is going to suffer a cost. So that's why it's important to go back to the contractual arrangements. And that all should have been set out at the outset before you even enter into the scheme.
Excellent, thank you. So if there's any other questions, here's the last chance to submit them via the questions tab on the right hand side. But if there's no more questions for today, as I said, the recording will be made available after the webinar for you to share with any colleagues. If you do have any questions, please do get in touch. We can put you in touch with each of the speakers that have been on the call today. But no, thank you everyone for your time and for taking the time out of your day to join us. So thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.